The gavel hadn't yet fallen, but the air in the courtroom was already suffocating. A line of whispers buzzed among the spectators, their eyes darting toward the woman at the defense table. Her jacket clung tightly to her arms as though it was the last barrier between herself and the weight of judgment pressing down on her. "Remove the jacket," the bailiff barked. His voice was not a request but a demand, the kind designed to humiliate, to remind her she wasn't in control. For the first time since entering the courtroom, her eyes flickered, not in fear, but in reluctant obedience. She slid the fabric from her shoulders, folded it neatly as though even here, respect mattered. The room stilled. The gray tank top revealed the ink she had kept hidden until now, a black cross with wings, etched over her chest, the kind of symbol soldiers carried not as decoration, but as a memorial. The judge's hand froze mid-motion, the gavel hovering in the air. His eyes, cold and impartial only seconds before, locked onto the two. It was not just a mark. It was a story. And suddenly, every unspoken truth she had endured threatened to erupt into the silence of that courtroom. Her name was Claire Donovan, though the courtroom whispered it like an accusation rather than a memory. She was 36 years old, but her face carried the weight of someone who had already lived 3 lives. Beneath the scars etched faintly along her forearms, beneath the controlled breath she forced into her lungs, she bore the kind of history few could imagine. She had been a medic in Afghanistan, trained not for war, but for saving lives in the middle of it. She carried the sound of helicopters thundering through dust storms in her sleep, the smell of scorched sand and burned rubber lodged forever in her memory. She could still feel the pulse of soldiers fading beneath her fingertips, men who whispered their mothers' names as the world bled them dry. The tattoo was not vanity. It was survival. Each wing represented a life she had tried to save. Each notch in the cross was a brother or sister lost. She never spoke of it, because speaking felt like betrayal, of them, of herself, of the silence that followed their sacrifice. Yet here she was, standing trial in a courtroom that knew nothing of her past, only of the accusation tied to her present. The charge was disorderly conduct. On paper, it sounded small. In reality, it was humiliation. Weeks earlier, she had been escorted out of a veteran support group by police. Her crime, intervening when a younger vet, trembling and lost, was being mocked by an official. She had not raised her voice. She had only stepped between the man and the uniformed authority that belittled him. "Sit down or you'll regret it," they told her. She had refused. Now, they called it insubordination. They called it disruption. They called it disrespect for authority. But Claire knew better. They feared silence more than shouting, because silence held conviction. And hers was unshakable. Every inch of the courtroom was theater. The prosecutor, crisp in his suit, smirked as though victory was already his. The spectators leaned forward, eager not for truth, but for spectacle. Even the judge, stoic, cold, rehearsed, was another actor in the play. Claire stood at the center, her hands steady, her shoulders squared. She did not protest the bailiff's order when they told her to strip the jacket. She did not argue. She simply obeyed, because silence was louder than outrage. And when the tattoo was revealed, the room shifted. It wasn't just the judge who froze. It was the silence of recognition that moved through the spectators like a current. Some recognized the insignia. Not just any wings, not just any cross. This was a medic's memorial mark. The kind reserved for those who had not just served, but bled alongside the fallen. The prosecutor faltered mid-sentence, his voice catching. The smirk vanished, replaced by something uneasy, something defensive. He tried to continue, but the momentum was gone. The tattoo told what the courtroom transcript never would. Claire Donovan had enlisted at 19, a girl with steady hands and a heart too large for her own good. She had never been trained to hold a rifle, only to stitch wounds, reset bones, and pump life back into broken lungs. But war never cared about job descriptions. In the chaos of combat, she had carried men heavier than herself across open ground while bullets clawed the dirt around her. She had crouched in blood-soaked dust, whispering promises she couldn't keep, just to give the dying a shred of peace. Her jacket, her silence, these had been her armor in civilian life. No one in that courtroom knew the medals she kept tucked away in a shoebox under her bed. No one knew the nights she woke up drenched in sweat, hearing explosions that weren't there. And yet, here she was, treated not as a veteran but as a criminal. The judge cleared his throat, but the sound carried no authority. His eyes had shifted, once sharp, now clouded with something heavier. The bailiff, too, seemed unsettled. Even the young spectators in gray hoodies, who had come to see a trial like a show, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The prosecutor tried again. "Your Honor, the defendant's behavior." But his voice cracked under the weight of silence. Claire did not flinch, did not move, did not argue. She only stood, the ink of her tattoo catching the sterile courtroom light. And in that silence, the moral injustice hung heavier than any verdict. What no one knew, not the prosecutor, not the spectators, not even the judge, was that Claire was not alone. Veterans had been following her trial, quietly, patiently. Men and women she had once carried, once healed, once whispered promises to. They had filled the benches in the back of the courtroom, unnoticed until now, their heads bowed in silence. One by one, they began to rise. It was not chaos. It was not loud. It was a wave of stillness more powerful than any roar. Every veteran in that courtroom, from the youngest to the oldest, rose to their feet. Their jackets shifted, sleeves rolled, medals gleamed faintly against their shirts. The judge's gavel trembled in his hand. He did not strike it. He could not. For the first time, Claire raised her chin, her eyes meeting his. She did not need to speak. The tattoo spoke for her. The veteran spoke for her. Silence had become her greatest weapon. The prosecutor, suddenly small beneath the weight of so many unflinching stares, lowered his papers. His arguments meant nothing now. And the judge, his voice faltering, his authority dissolving, finally spoke. Case dismissed. The veterans did not sit back down. They followed her out, a procession of quiet honor that transformed the courtroom into a hollow shell. Spectators who had come for entertainment were left standing, hushed and ashamed. The prosecutor stared at his papers, but they no longer mattered. The judge, still gripping his gavel, sat frozen, the tattoo etched into his mind like a scar he could not erase. Claire walked into the sunlight outside, her jacket folded in her arms once more. But she did not wear it. For the first time in years, she let the tattoo remain visible. Not as a shield, not as defiance, but as truth. Respect cannot be forced. It cannot be ordered in a courtroom or demanded by authority. It lives in the silence of those who have carried burdens too heavy to speak aloud. Claire Donovan's story was not about a verdict. It was about dignity, the kind that endures humiliation, injustice, and silence and still refuses to break. Some heroes never need to announce themselves. They walk among us quietly, carrying scars and stories etched not just on their skin, but on their souls. And sometimes, all it takes is a single moment, a tattoo revealed, a silence unbroken, for the world to remember who they truly are. Where are you watching this from today? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your reflections on Claire's story. And if you believe in honoring the silent heroes who walk among us, subscribe for more stories like this one. Because sometimes, the loudest voices are found in silence.